Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 730. I'm Tom Cagley, your host today. The SPaMCAST 730 features our conversation with Ramzi Marjaba. Ramzi and I discuss the role of the sales engineer. The role solves customers' problems and is a bridge between customers and technical teams. With all that going for it, why is it a forgotten job path for people with deep technical acumen? Ramzi is an established sales engineer and the founder of We the Sales Engineers, and found his calling in helping people change their lives for better, either by breaking into the difficult world of sales engineering or upskilling their current skill levels and to get that pay raise and promotion. Are you ready to learn about sales engineering? It's time for the interview. Ramzi Marjaba, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I am looking forward to this. This is a topic that I think is critically important. It's important for people to consider how their career is going to go and that it doesn't have to be absolutely, I'm going to be a junior programmer, senior programmer. I'm going to be a senior programmer for a long time before I become whatever's next. Yeah. There are lots of different paths. Why don't we see if we can scare a few people away pretty much immediately and utter the almost four-letter word, sales. What is a sales engineer?
Okay. A sales engineer is a human being, hopefully, who solves a business problem through technology. In short, so we talk to customers, we understand what problems they're having. Usually it's business problems. If we can't get to the business problems, then we're not doing our job as sales engineers. And then we offer a solution based on the toolkit that we have from our own company, the company we work for. And I'm happy to dig into whichever aspect you want out of that statement.
We'll get to, I think, probably most of those as we get through this. But once upon a time in my life, if you had uttered the word sales to me, the first thing that would have popped to mind is some person in a used car yard selling really beat up used cars in a plaid shirt or a plaid sports coat. And, I would have run for the hills. Dissuade me of that vision. Is your job to help people or is your job to make your quota?
Well, in theory, those car salesmen, their job is to help people. And through helping people, they would make their quota. But it also depends on how people are incentivized. If their quota is too high, if it's not realistic, and if it's most salespeople that I know are commission-based, but they have a big chunk of their salary that's a base. You get paid a good chunk of money that's a base, and you make a lot of money as a salesperson in terms of commission. Hopefully that base can sustain you so you don't have to be dishonest about anything. Now, I'm in the sales engineering part of that. And every single sales engineer that I talk to, they know that their job is to help customers. Because in helping, as I mentioned earlier, in helping customers, not only do they get the sale, they also get future sales that might come up. As a car salesman, it's a very transactional thing where you come in, sell one car. The person who bought from you might not buy another car for 5-10 years. Or if they want to buy another car, they might go to a different dealership and there's no brand loyalty or anything like that. So there's a bit of a difference in car salesmen. And I've met a few good ones, a lot of bad ones. And sales in general, and like in the high-tech world, if you're a software engineer and you want to transition to sales engineering or sales, it's a very different world. It's more consultative than transactional.
I have argued many times over the past number of years that anyone who actually is trying to convince somebody of an idea needs to understand sales. So I don't view sales as being that pariah state. I think we all do sales. Do you see sales that way, or is it?
Yeah. I mean, when I reached out to you, my biggest point was every person is a salesperson, and what they're selling is themselves in one way, shape, or form. If you want a new job, and you go into the interview process. That is a sales process where you're applying to, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 jobs. These are all leads that you found on LinkedIn or whatever source that you have. And then you went and met with the recruiter, hiring manager, other people, where you've done discovery calls. You need to understand why they're looking to hire, because if you can't understand that, you don't know how to solve their problem. So that's a discovery. And then you need to convince them that you're the better solution, you're the better product than any other competitive product in the market, which are other potential employees. And then you need to close the deal, negotiate the salary, and close the deal. Get the offer in hand, because they might offer you something and you never get that paper offer. You never sign anything. That's not really an offer until it's signed. So every time you talk to a human being, there is some form of sales taking place. If you want to go out on a date, that's a sales process, which I'm not an expert in, but that's what I've been told. I'm expert in the sales process, not the dating process. Just
I have been spending the afternoon negotiating with my partner to go out and get wings. She's not a big wings person. So we are negotiating, and it is a sales process. The whole idea of a sales engineer, I looked you up, and I mean, you've got a master's in engineering. How technical does a sales engineer have to be?
I'm always asked that question, and my response is, it depends on you.
Oh, you were such a consultant.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. The more technical you are, the faster the sales cycle can potentially be. The more you can answer questions. The issue arises, especially in sales engineering, and it could be if you're a software engineer. I call it regular because it's not sales. But if you're an engineer, software engineer, and you want to convince someone of something, you have to be able to relay technical information in a manner that anybody else can understand. If you're talking to another engineer, you're going to be very technical. If you're not very technical, you're going to have to go rely on somebody else, which increases the sales cycle. And if you work with any company, they're trying to close the deal yesterday. So then if you're talking to a manager or a director or a VP, it becomes less technical, more about business. So if you're a sales engineer, if you want to become a sales engineer, having technical capability is a must. Having business acumen is a must. And then being able to relate technical information into business, that's what differentiates the good from the great.
How does one of those get created? I mean, do you just take two people, stick them in a Cuisinart and mix them together and hopefully they pour out as a single human being? How does that actually happen in real life?
I find it to be a mentality shift more than anything else. Like every engineer is able to do it, in my opinion. They might not want to do it. They might not enjoy talking to people as much. When I went into engineering, when I studied engineering, I studied it so I don't have to talk to people. I wanted to work with computers. I didn't want to talk to anybody. And soon realized that if I want to get anywhere in life, I'm going to have to talk to people. So if you are one of those people who want to talk to people, understand the business aspect, it's just going to be a mentality shift where every time you work on a technology, you have to understand what that means to the person buying that technology. Versus a lot of engineers that I've worked with, they only focus on their part of the code, not even the feature or what the feature means. And part of my job, because I work in networking, so a lot of stuff that we demo to our customers, like Cisco or Nokia, they're all alpha. And we have engineers come in and do alpha demos. And all they're talking about is the features, not what it means to the customer. So the mentality has to shift from, this is a cool feature that I would use for myself, to what does that mean for the customer?
Tell us about your path to get there. And then we will probe to see whether or not that is typical or atypical.
So I went to university in Canada, a university called Carleton University, studied communications engineering. Graduated in 2009 during the not so good times. 4 months later, found a job at Alcatel-Lucent as a support engineer. I then transitioned to a network design engineer. I was severely underpaid. My boss knew it. Everybody knew it. So I applied to a systems engineering role. And I got the job only to find out that systems engineer is another title they use for a sales engineer, which I would not have applied to if I knew, like, I would never have wanted to become. So I fell into this role as a sales engineer, and I've been enjoying it ever since. So I've been doing this for almost 8 years now, since 2014. Did I do the math right? I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, you did the math well enough, and it probably was right. I still don't get how one melds this, finds this business acumen. So you've described a sales engineer as, I would say, a pretty extraordinary kind of position. You know, somebody who can take that technical acumen, that business acumen, and marry them together. Where did Ramzi get that business acumen that to marry? Because you went through your pedigree to get to the technical side. Where did the business acumen come from, and how can how can a normal human being, someone that doesn't have your superpowers, actually go down that path?
Well, I got the business acumen by asking a lot of questions.
Curiosity.
Yeah. So there's a lot of information in the world. If you go on the YouTubes and the interwebs about sales and about engineering, there was nothing about sales engineering. So I wanted to get better in that. And there wasn't anything out there. I started my own, and I got to ask a lot of questions. Now I have my podcast has been running for almost 4 years now, since 2018. But the reason I got better at the business side is because I ask questions. Whenever I want to talk about a feature, my question is, so what? Oh, this feature can help you implement X. So what? Well, implementing X will speed up your process by X amount. So what? Speeding up your process by X amount, that means you can have an extra 2 releases per year. So what? Well, having an extra 2 releases per year, that means your salespeople can sell more. And in the end, it always comes down to money, time, and risk. So if you want to summarize business acumen, when you're talking to a customer, that's the 3 things they care about: time, money, risk. And they always lead to the same thing: money. They don't want to lose money with spending a lot of time doing something. They want to lose money in general. And if something is high risk, let's say they have a breach, they're losing money. That's basically, once I started asking these questions, I started putting 2 and 2 together. Right? We have this feature, it solves this problem for my customer. Great. So when I talk about this feature to my customer, I don't talk about the feature. I don't name it, because the naming that I have is not the same as they have. Let's talk about the business outcome. Right? And we can only get there by asking questions. I don't know everybody's business, but I know how to ask enough questions so that they would tell me what's important for them, what's the business outcome they're looking for, and then I can just translate what I have into their language, basically.
That sounds a lot like consulting and coaching. I see a great relationship between those, though, all of those things: sales engineer, consulting, coaching. That looking for an answer.
They're exactly the same. So there's a saying that people have is, people hate to be sold, but they love to buy. So when I'm asking questions, the reason I prefer asking questions than doing presentations, and I'm sure many software engineers have sat through vendor presentations and they fell asleep just because it's people selling. But if you can have a consultative approach, which I mentioned earlier, ask questions, try to understand. I mean, Dale Carnegie, author of like How to Win Friends and Influence People, said, if you want to be interesting, be interested. So genuinely be curious about what they're trying to talk about and why they're asking for this information. Try to understand that. And through asking your questions, they'll slowly start to see the vision of how your solution solves the problem, or see that your solution is not a good fit for them. Either way, that's a good thing, because they can move on, you can move on, or they will buy from you instead of you having to shove something down their throat. You don't have to ask them in the end, like, what do I need to do to get you in this car today? And that's not a question that you'd have to ask if you do a consultative sales approach well.
You know, many organizations don't have this role, and whether they're selling inside or selling outside, I don't know that it matters a whole lot. The role makes a ton of sense. How would you convince an organization to actually pony up to having something like a sales engineer, or, and I'm doing air quotes for those who can't see, the systems analyst that you were suckered into?
Well, I got suckered into a systems engineer.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. So again, it's the same. It's a sales process. What's in it for them? In the end, it always ends up being what's in it for them. The way I see it, engineers are very good at what they're doing, and what they're doing every day. Let's say software engineers is either designing code or verifying that code. That's what they're good at. Sales engineers are good at conveying messages from technical to business. At least the good sales engineers. Now, what most companies do, if they don't have sales engineers, is their salesperson is talking to their customer, and then they say, "Oh, I don't know the answer to this question. Let me go get a technical resource." Okay? And they bring in the software engineer whose job is to write code, and they do it well. I will never be able to do the same thing that they do. But they can't have a conversation with the customer because they're talking about the bits and bytes instead of talking about the business. So if they want to sell more, they need someone who has the reps in talking business and is also technical. So again, if they hire a sales engineer who costs more than what they're selling, bad move. But if the sales engineer can help them sell more, that's a great move. And that's what sales engineers usually do. When you have a sales engineer, through the research that we've done, if the sales engineer enters the sales cycle early, it leads to a better close rate than it is if they come in just for the answering the technical questions in the end, because by then the customer already made their decision.
If they didn't already have their decision, just looking for a qualification after when they walked in the door. They've done a lot of research these days. If you were an internal organization, isn't selling a product, but supporting and working with their own internal organization, do you think people feel that, business analysts and managers actually fill this sales engineering role? And is that a role that you see they should be doing if it's purely internal?
Well, if it's purely internal, so let's take an IT department at a bank. Is that a good example?
That's a wonderful example.
All right. So the IT, there's someone in the IT department who works with vendors. Right? And then they collect all this information and they want to tell their bosses which product to buy, or if we really need this product and we need it today because we're losing all these problems. It's still it's an internal sales process where that individual is trying to convince their bosses to pony up money for something that they may not deem necessary. Now, if you have buy-in from the bosses, that's great. It makes your job easier. It's always easier to sell something that our people already want. Yeah. But sometimes we want something that our bosses don't think we need. And that's where your sales cycle comes in, where you as an individual have to do a discovery. It needs an analysis call, a vision building call with your boss so that they can see that there is a problem. A lot of times bosses don't see that there is a problem, but you do because you work in it every day. And it has to be a real problem, not just a problem for you. It has to be a problem for the team, for the bank, for the organization. And then you have to highlight it to the boss, get them to see the problem, then offer a solution to the problem. And that's a sales engineer. It's just internal and you don't get paid commission. So if you get good at that, you should go and work for the vendor so you can get paid commission. My humble opinion.
At some point, where does this, if you were thinking of a sales engineer role as a port of call in a person's career, where do you go from there other than perhaps a sales engineer manager kind of thing?
Many sales engineers just fall in love with the role. Many people come into sales engineering, they fall in love with the role and don't ever want to leave. There are some who want to become SE managers, which you already mentioned. But the sales engineer position opens up so many doors because now as a sales engineer, you're interacting with many different parts of the company. As a sales engineer, I'm interacting with project managers. I'm interacting with support. If you have enough influence, you can deal directly with development and R&D. you're dealing with, you're talking to the VPs of sales, VPs of different or GMs of different parts of the company. So you get exposed to all that. Marketing is one. So you can go wherever you want. If you keep your technical know-how up to date, which sales engineers should do, because we're selling the latest and greatest. Nobody wants to buy a 2020, well, what's a good 2013 Toyota Corolla from a new sales engineer. They can just go to eBay or to a used car dealership and buy that. So you get exposed to a lot of different places. Many of the sales engineers that I work with end up falling in love with sales and going into sales as well, which sounds dreadful, but no, they do it by choice because they see the closer you are to the customer, the more money, generally speaking, that you make. And they want to be more in control of the deal. So they go into sales. But I've seen people go into marketing. I've seen people go back into engineering, in my case, network design. I've seen people do that. Start their own business because you're exposed to the technical and the business. You have the acumen to start your own thing, whether it's on the side, main, whatever it is. But the options are pretty much endless.
Yeah, I see the role, and I think I may have stumbled across the role once or twice in my career, but you've really opened up my eyes in terms of what the role is, and I see the role as just amazingly rich in terms of availability of information and places that you can, if you're interested, if you're curious, you can actually learn a ton. And whether you fall in love with the role, it does open up, I think, a lot of different windows. If you woke up tomorrow morning and somebody handed you your caffeinated beverage of choice and a magic wand and said that you had two wishes, any two things that you want that would make the world safe for sales engineering, what would those two things be and why?
Make the world safe for sales engineering. Oof. I don't think the world's unsafe for sales engineering. I wish there would be more opening or more chances for people who want to become SEs to become SEs. It's very difficult to break into a sales engineering role.
Why?
Because generally speaking, you need that business acumen and that technical acumen. So if you look at any job description, everybody requires 3 to 10 years of customer-facing experience. But how can you get customer-facing experience without customer-facing experience? It's a chicken and the egg situation.
Catch-22 problem. Yep.
Yeah, and a lot of organizations either hire experienced sales engineers because they can't afford to train someone on the soft skills, or if they hire someone new, like I've seen a startup hire a brand new SE as their first SE, and they fail miserably because they don't have the support. So I guess in terms of safety, I wish the sales engineers had the same support that engineers do and also that salespeople do. Generally speaking, sales engineers are in the world and they're left to fend for themselves, which is why I found the community of sales engineers amazing, because we got together by happenstance. We started communicating, we got together, and now we're lifting each other up outside our organizations. I wish organizations would do that. I hope that answered your question.
That was one.
What was the second one?
The second one was you had two wishes.
The two wishes.
Yeah. I don't let people off the hook on the second wish generally.
Well, I'm sure everybody said $1 million.
Some people have actually said 2 more wishes, but I don't let them have that either.
No, I wish more people knew about the role, which is what I'm doing here.
Yeah,
I wanted to evangelize the role a little bit, help people out if they choose to become sales engineers. But it's a very good role for someone who you don't have to be an extrovert. I'm an introvert. I enjoy being with my own thoughts. So you don't have to be an extrovert. Being an extrovert is a good thing. There are strengths and weaknesses to either one. And we're basically solving problems. And that's the misconception about sales engineers. Like we're selling. We're solving problems. Customers just happen to buy what we solve.
So long as you're solving their problems, I think that's a great motivator. You mentioned Well, and I think this takes us to the question I wanted to ask about, and have you tell people about your podcast and some of the other things that you do. How can there be more support for the role? Isn't that one of the things that you're trying to fill?
Yeah, externally. I wish there was more support internally within organizations. Like you hear a lot about sales enablement or engineer technical enablement. You don't hear about sales engineering enablement. So that's what I like. I'm an external source, and I'm happy to be there. There are a couple that came out that people should be exposed to. I just my hope, my wish that one of them is internally within the company, people value and people help and support sales engineers the way they support their sales team. That's what I meant.
But the reality is, this role, I think, even externally, is not very well supported. So you've been doing things. Well, why don't you tell us about your podcast, and then we can riff on that a little bit.
Thank you. Well, I started my podcast mainly because of that. I didn't feel I had enough support. And I figured the only way to get people to talk to me is to tell them that I have a podcast. And there you go. I started a podcast.
I'm only laughing because I did the same thing.
So I started back in 2018. I have 36 episodes next Monday, about at the time of the recording. So I've been doing this for a while. It's all about sales engineering, soft skills. We don't discuss technology because there's a lot of places that discuss technology. Just how people can break into sales engineering, how people can get better at sales engineering. And I also have blogs, YouTube videos, all around that topic. And I do offer my services to people who want to get better or break in. So yeah, I mean, check out WeTheSalesEngineers.com. And I'd love to hear your thoughts around sales engineering in general.
Super. And we'll obviously have that contact. How, if people listen to this, and in the middle of listening to this or at the end of listening to this, they want to talk to Ramzi, or they want to reach out, how would they go about finding out about you, finding out about your podcast, all of that stuff?
My website is WeTheSalesEngineers.com if you want to find out about the podcast. If you want to talk to me directly, Ramzi at WeTheSalesEngineers.com. That's my email. You can reach out at any point in time. I do my best to respond in a timely fashion. Or you can check me out on LinkedIn. I have We the Sales Engineers on LinkedIn, and also I'm Ramzi Marjaba on LinkedIn. I'm the scary looking dude. Not sure why. It just turns out to be that way.
Scary looking. Yeah. No.
I've been called worse by myself.
Okay. Well, you don't look scary to me.
We don't need to get into that. That's too much information at this point.
Yeah. Maybe when we do a next podcast, we can do that.
Sure.
So at this point, I open up the platform for you to promote anything you like. And, I've been at this for a few more years than you have, but all of those shows are out there, whether they go to Libsyn, whether they go to Apple, or whether they go anywhere. So you can still get a hold of them. So I think selling your car on eBay is probably not the right answer for this spot, but feel free to promote anything you'd like, and we'll use that also.
Yeah, I want to promote sales engineering, my website, which I already plugged.
What was that? WeTheSalesEngineer.com?
Yeah, WeTheSalesEngineers.com, or We the SEs for short. WeTheSEs.com for short. Like everything's on my website, and people can connect with me there. If people want help, if people want help becoming SEs or getting better at sales engineering, reach out, and I'm happy to help.
Ramzi Marjaba, thank you very much for spending time educating the Software Process and Measurement Cast listeners. Heck, educating me. And again, I think we all podcast for a lot of reasons. Hopefully it's good for the listeners. It certainly was educational for me. So thanks again.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
In Reread Saturday News this week, we reread Chapter 3 of Extraordinary Badass Agile Coaching, the journey from beginner to mastery and beyond. In Chapter 3, Agile Coaching Frameworks, the authors create a line in the sand stating, professional badass Agile coaching needs to support and model a multivariate framework that supports all aspects of our craft. Remember, buy a copy, read along. Links in the show notes to this week's and all previous weeks' entries in our reread of Extraordinary Badass Agile Coaching. I really like saying that. In the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 731, we continue our answer to the question, if one product owner is good, aren't 2 or 3 or 4 better? We also have a visit from John M. Quigley, who brings his Alpha and Omega of Product Development column to the podcast. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?